Hey, Dr. Derek Nielsen here, Kaizen Physical Therapy. Today I want to talk about treating a person as parts and not looking at the whole picture. So, in science we're infamous for breaking things down, let's talk about the human. We break it down to its individual parts until there are no more parts to break down. So we have, a cardiologist, a neurologist, ophthalmologist, so on, rheumatologist, so on and so forth. They'll look at the individual parts, but who looks at the whole? It's kind of a little bit of a flaw here that we have in the medical field. Well, it's no different within my profession. So let's say you come into me with an injury. We'll use low back pain as it's the most prevalent. Let's say you come in with an injury and all I do is look at your low back. Well, there's a problem with that. We do need to look at the individual parts, but we have to look at the whole picture again. We have to put it back in to be able to see if what we changed on an individual level produced the outcomes with the whole picture. So, for example, they've actually shown in research that they looked at a single leg squat. Okay, so they found participants that didn't have good ankle mobility to perform a good single leg squat. So what do? They stretch the ankle until they have adequate enough mobility. Well, when they went back and retested the single leg squat, the squat looked the same. Why? Well, as most of us know or have heard the term muscle memory, which actually is not true, but the concept itself does hold true. It's actually termed a motor pattern or motor control. So within our bodies, within our nervous system, within our brain, we have movement patterns which are stored. Okay, so when we look at the individual part and break it down and change that individual part, just like they did with the ankle mobility by stretching the calf, when you put it back into the whole system, it doesn't necessarily change, and that's because of a motor pattern. You have a stored motor pattern. That single leg squat is a stored memory within the nervous system and the brain. Just because you stretch or influence one of the parts doesn't mean that motor pattern is going to change. So what we have to do is we have to find and break down, okay, so if we're looking at a squat pattern, if it doesn't look good, we think that's the reason for the injury, whatnot. We have to break it down and say, okay, what does the pattern look like? What are the individual parts? So for a squat, the hips have to move well, the back has to move well, the ankles have to move well. Okay, as well as you have to be able to stabilize. So we have to be able to break those down and say, okay, which part of that pattern is not working well enough? Influence that portion. Okay, and then let's say that all of those individual parts are working well. Well, I can't just say, okay, now you're good to go. We have to reintroduce that first movement pattern, the squat, and we have to retrain that. So just like with science, it is great to be able to break down whole into part, but we have to learn to put that part back into the whole and see if when we influence the individual part, does it influence the whole. Hopefully that makes sense. Let me know if you have any questions.